let us know how we can support you. The work that we do, even though I work with women, I do like to support, even, with my team members and we can, sometimes we can maneuver and work with everyone. And then sometimes we may have some issues with a conflict of our schedule. I do like to support, even, with my team members and we can, sometimes we can. All right. And so with that being said, let me down this. All right. Are we here? Have you found us on Facebook?
Yes. It hasn't popped up yet.
Okay. Before I do introductions and all, only bio I'm going to read is Mr. Jones, okay? And because everybody else, I put their bios up, and hopefully Miss Woods will be joining us as soon as she can get in that link. All right. Are we set? Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Dr. Juanita Britt McDonald, founder and executive of the Rediscover Me community. How is everybody? I'm so excited to be here today. We have a lot to talk about. We have a whole lot to talk about. There's a lot of things I'm going to learn today, and hopefully you will too. We'll get an opportunity to connect intimately with some amazing guests. And these amazing guests are going to give us a little bit of insight into their world. And so, as you know, the work that we do with our organization, Rediscover Me Women Initiative, our primary aim is to engage, educate, and inspire change for which a woman and teen girls can, who may be affected by abuse, trauma, and mental health, can rediscover the me that she wants to be. And you know how we do that, guys. Everybody that follow us, we do it by the 3 pillars: lost identity plus lost self-esteem equals lost purpose and direction. And following with our mission today, we're going to be talking to some amazing individuals that centers on the mental sentence of parents with an incarcerated child. The mental perspective of this is one of those avenues that we've never really talked about. And I must share this part. As I did my research, wow, it was very, very hard. There are articles where some parents have actually had, kind of shared their feelings, in writing in a news article, but the scope of the data is not there. The scope of the degree that parents or family members go through forms of trauma is not there. The scope of parents who have been institutionalized just from trying to comprehend what they've had to face is not there. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to connect with some amazing individuals. And you know what? You can't do it unless you have a phenomenal individual like Mr. Lester Young, who is our co-host, who's joining in here to help us. You have, I believe that connecting with experts, and so you can't connect with an expert until you go to the source. And so I'm so honored and excited to have you, Mr. Young. We have the phenomenal April Hart, who is going to be joining us and giving us the perspective from a mother's perspective, from a mother's view. And then we have this amazing light that I'm just finding out about, Pastor Kelvin Young, who is, he is a go-getter in our community. And the more I got, I got an opportunity to do a little snippet, but just the snippet that I got an opportunity to research was amazing. And it had my eyebrow kind of like, oh, wow, awesome. I'm so amazing. I'm so proud to have you here. And another individual who will be joining us also, mother with an incarcerated son, Queen Woods. And so she'll be jumping in as well. And so we don't want to hold everybody up. You've heard us kind of coming in, having that little sidebar conversation. Thank you so much for being patient with us. But right now, before I get started, I want Mr. Lester Young to kind of greet you and share a little bit about himself as well. Mr. Young.
Great. Blessings to everyone who gets the chance to see, who's watching us now on Facebook Live or may catch the replay. I thank you all for taking the time to really tune into this. I think is a well-needed conversation about the impact that incarceration has on a parent. It's all too often that we hear about what it does to when an individual goes to prison, but we really don't take under consideration how a mother feels, or what the emotional state of that mother or that father after their loved one is inside of a prison system. So I encourage you guys to tune in, share, like this video, post some comments for some more questions. And we're going to continue. Hopefully we'll continue to expand this platform, because I think it's a well-deserved, well-needed conversation about the impact. So thank you guys for tuning in, our guests. Thank you all for your support. And please just continue to share this information with everyone, and be honest, and let's make an impact in this society right now. Be blessed.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Young. Ms. Hart, Pastor Jones, hey, I want you, starting with Ms. Hart, I want you to just give us a little bit of insight. Everyone else I've posted their bios, but I want them to give us a little bit more of a personal feel about who they are. Something, that is impactful to you, something that makes your heart happy. I always tell people something very, very positive. Share with us on that, Miss April Hart.
Well, my passion from a very young age has always been to work with children. I've worked with children from newborn up to college age, and it's just something about working with the youth that just makes my heart smile. I had my children at 17, so I was a young mom. I've been a mom for a long, long time. I'm currently working for Richland County School District 1. I also have a bath and body business. I make body butter and soap, and just formulating recipes brings my mind peace.
Awesome. I like that, formulating recipes. That's very creative. Thank you so much. Pastor Jones, tell me something about you that I didn't get from the newspaper.
Okay. First, my passion is definitely helping those that have been formerly incarcerated, as well as those that are now currently incarcerated, being that I myself have been incarcerated, and just helping individuals first inside the institutions. But then my passion now is more so helping those before they actually go to the institution. So my passion is working with at-risk youth. I love it. And through that passion, I formed another passion of creating clothing, and I got a clothing line called Focus Life. And in that, it's a message of staying focused. But people ask me all the time, how do I manage to stay out of trouble? They say once you go, you always to go back. And it's all about being focused. I've been home 18 years, and so I just try to stay focused. But helping the youth is my passion, and then we took the clothing line, and since we started it, and we started getting with youth and finding out that they got a great skill set. They just haven't tap into it. So we use the clothing line as a way to get our youth involved with expressing themselves through clothing. So it's wonderful when you see one of the youth take what's in their mind and they put it on a shirt and they wear it, and the look that they get, the smiles that they get to know they created it and they did something positive is all I need. I love it.
That is so indescribable. What do you think about that, Lester? That is so indescribable and very creative.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've always told people is that when we want to stop no entry into the prisons and change the violent culture that we see through media about what's going on in some of our communities, we have to give our youth a tool. And one of the greatest tools you can give a youth is a tool of entrepreneurship, something to express themselves, something to give them a sense of identity. And like Kelvin mentioned, the clothing, wearing something that you created, it gives you a sense of identity. And when you give someone a sense of identity, then you have a greater chance at changing that person's direction in their lives. If they're heading to a prison or a graveyard, that one investment could be that one thing to turn that person around, that they can go into this world and be phenomenal beyond their belief systems.
That's true.
Absolutely. And there's greatness in everyone. And I'm just a firm believer that where a person is today is not where they will be tomorrow.
Thanks.
And we need to look a lot deeper. I'm not a little deeper. We need to look a lot deeper into the individual and how we can help them and how we can see the problem more so, you know, the issues, the brokenness, the hurt, the pain, more so than we see the situation.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and so it's very important. So with that being said, we're going to start with our questions. And so this is from, you know, and as I shared earlier, the aim is to look at it from the depths of our mind. And your mind, as I share with women, is the biggest battle you fight every day. And it is a prison all by itself.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, so here today, we want to be able to allow everyone that is watching, everyone that is sharing the video, everyone that is inviting friends to just take a moment and think about, you know, what would you be, you know, what would happen to you, or where would I be, or how would I handle a situation if something happened to my child? You know, you have a beautiful baby, Lester. She is so precious. I love seeing your daddy and daughter moments, and to see you, you know, with her, and to see something happen to her, somebody grab her, somebody, you know, put cuffs on her, you know, mindset. How would you handle that? Share for us before we go into our questioning.
I think about that all the time, you know, and I got chills just ran through my body thinking about that. But I have to go back to my father. When I remember when I was getting into trouble, I never took under consideration or even phantom how it impacted my father. Like, how did my crime? I committed a crime, a violent crime, murder. I worked with my father all these years before I committed this crime on this job with him. And then the next day I got arrested. I got arrested one day and he had to go back to work and walk around these same people who he vouched for. Like, my son deserved an opportunity for employment, got me a job, made sure of all of this. And the decisions I chose to make, not even thinking about the impact it was going to have on my father and my 3 sisters at the time, you know, never thinking about that I did it. And when I had a real conversation with my father after me being sentenced to life in prison, this made me really understand the impact. It's almost like his legs and his arms was amputated. You know, when a parent loses a loved one to a crime and they're sentenced to prison, it's like they amputated and like it stopped them from breathing. You know, and they find a way to find some oxygen to breathe, but it's not enough sometimes. Sometimes it's overwhelming, you know. And I remember the day I made parole after 22 years, my father visited me for many years inside of that system. But the day I made parole was the day I truly believe my dad got his arms back, his legs back, and his lungs. Because for the first time, he was able to exhale. And that's what some parents do. They go around every day not able to breathe properly. It's like a part of them is gone. You know, and that's just the impact of incarceration that happened for me. So when I think about my daughter today, I'm like, I can't even imagine that. And it makes me even more understanding now what my father went through. You know, I'm his only son. You know, when I was sentenced to life, you know, some of these parents, their children been sentenced to 40 years, that the fear is that I may never live to see my son or daughter ever get out of prison again. They have to live with that stress, and it messes them up here emotionally, you know? So that's why I said this conversation is so needed.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. Let's transition. I would love to hear, starting with April, and then Kelvin, and then you, Lester.
Mm-hmm.
What, April, tell us, you know, just describe the relationship of you and your child. You know, what was your relationship like as a mom? Unmute yourself, April, please. April, unmute yourself, please. April. Sorry about that, everyone, but she is muted and I need to try to get her unmuted. I just asked her to unmute herself, so.
You know, the host.
Yeah, I'm trying
The
to.
time that he went to prison,
There we go.
he had, he was in the process of finding his identity. He was always my most responsible child. I take that back. The twins, his brother, they are both very responsible children. But when I say he was my most responsible, what I mean is if I ever needed him to do anything, be anywhere, he was always Johnny on the spot. He's very personable and loving. He cares deeply about people. We just, our only sore spot per se was me always trying to push him to get his life in gear.
So April, do you think there was a lot of pressure or?
A lot of pressure on him. Oh yes. Oh yes.
Okay.
I had previously described myself as a very hard mom, a very firm mom. I love my children and I show them love, but at the same time, I'm a very no nonsense parent. You're going to do what you need to do in order to be self-sufficient and, learn your life lessons that you need to learn.
Awesome. Yes, ma'am. Pastor Jones, your relationship.
My relationship with my children now is very great now. It wasn't at the start because of my incarceration. So once I, came home and reunited with them, I got 2 boys and 2 girls, and man, it was just incredible to watch them grow up and just see them not make the mistakes I made. And I think I became at one point maybe a little overbearing because I just stayed on them. I talk night, day in and day out about don't make the mistakes I made, stressing the importance of not catching a felon and just living their lives. And to see them now, all 4, doing what they should, doing what they're supposed to do, being the children that I know they can be, it warms my heart because I wasn't that to my parents. And I had to, remember when my parents had to talk with me, and like Lester father, they told me how my incarcerations had affected them because I only thought it affected me. But just knowing that, my children now, if they got arrested, and had to be put in handcuffs, it would break my heart. But I thank God now today that they're responsible kids and they're doing awesome.
Absolutely. Lester.
Miss Juanita.
Go ahead, we can see we got Miss Woods in here. I appreciate you joining, Miss Woods.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining. We're talking about just the impact that having your loved one inside of a prison system, and we really just want everyone to really understand the emotional, mental impact that has on a loved one. So that we can really help people. Really help people understand it, but also help them heal in a way too, because there's too many parents struggling with this silently. Like my father and so many other fathers and mothers don't have a support group for parents who have a loved one inside of a prison. I see a lot of groups like wives, women loving their men inside of prison, but I really very rarely do I see parent support groups. So this is what we're going to be just continues doing some deep dive into really understanding that and the impact of that. So you want to let Ms. Woods share a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Ms. Woods, we're talking about, we're asking each individual to share the relationship, you and your relationship with your child. What was it like, the uniqueness and what was so special about your child that you hold dear?
Well, with me, when we first met, I was a single parent. I've always been a single parent, and me and Travis was super close growing up. That was my baby, my only child, and I was the one he would talk to. I always made sure I found someone as far as a male figure if it was something he was uncomfortable with me talking to me about, but I was able to break that shell with him as well, and he got super comfortable with sharing with me whatever it was that may have been bothering him. That's why I was so devastated when he got into the trouble that he got into.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. April was trying to share something, Lester, and I think we overlooked her, and we apologize for that. Could you go back and share, April, what it was you were trying to say?
In addition to being a parent, and especially with things that are going on now today, I think the way that I tried to raise my children, especially my male children, was the fact that they were Black. You know, so when you have a Black male child, you do tend to be a little more firm on those children, because you know the struggles that they're about to face.
Well, actually, Lester, I don't know if you caught on to what April is saying, and Pastor Jones said the same exact thing. When we, and they're kind of radiated. And the first thing I thought of when he shared about informing his children not to follow the same pathway, and then now we hear Miss April sharing, being that mother that's trying to impact a male child or a female child, getting them to begin to see, we don't want you to go this path because we know what is out there, and now we have to say our daughters, because our daughters are being, accustomed like the men were. And so before, it was like when our Black boys would go out, we're like, as moms, just as you described with your father, as a mother, my son walk out the door, I only have one too. And it's like, home, let me know when you get home, drive safely, be careful, follow the rules. So what, from a male perspective, touch a little bit more on that area.
It's like I said, this is really moving me emotionally on so many levels, because my father was the type of guy that made every investment in me. Like, I remember he was firm. Like Miss April said, my father was a firm man when it came down to disciplining me. And he would take the time to find mentors, male mentors who've been in the prison system, to talk to me. But it's, again, when you in your own selfish mind and your own searching your own identity, you don't want to entertain the thoughts of what your parents thinking about. But he was that guy, like so many of you right now who are parents, are making an investment in your children. But we sometimes don't understand that our decision has a ripple effect on everybody that is connected to us. I did not see that part of it. Like, everyone was telling me how bad prison was, but no one never told me the emotional and mental impact of my decision on my father, his health, and no one really talks about that part. So we just, you're gonna go to jail and this was gonna happen. But I think that we need to switch that when we're mentoring these young men who may be displaying, or women who are displaying these signs. Like, do you know that when you go to prison, that the impact is going to be on your mother? That who's going to be there to protect her? You go to jail for 40 years and your mother's already 50 years old. Who's going to be there to take care of her? Like, we got to really get that seed planted in their head to say that you have to be thinking about the impact that it's going to have on your parents, not about you impressing your homeboy, but your parents, because they suffer a great deal. And I can't imagine what a mother or father feels thinking about, like, am I going to ever see my son or daughter make it out of prison? I think that that's a real conversation that is there every day, that is prevalent every day in the mind of a parent.
It is.
Absolutely. Before I go to the next question, anybody want to piggyback off of that, give an example or anything? I think that's important. So that's why I kind of plugged that part in.
Yeah, I want to hear what parents struggle with like that.
Yeah.
Do y'all really go to bed thinking about this? Because, prison is a violent environment. We know what's going on in prison. You can't reach out to your son or your daughter every day. And I know that's something that weighs heavy on your heart. Like, how do y'all deal with that fact that you got your son in prison and they're in there for a long time? How do you deal with that, and knowing that he may end up getting hurt and you can't be there to comfort them?
Pray.
Me as a mother, okay, go ahead, my bad.
No, I was just saying prayer, a lot of prayer. Go ahead.
Yeah, me as a mother, that's what I have to constantly stay in, is prayer, being that I'm an ex-captain from a prison. So I know firsthand what my child is facing and what he's up against. He's not actually in prison, but he could be headed that way to finish out his sentence. But luckily we were able to get him a great attorney that took his sentence from a 20-year sentence all the way down to a minimum, right at above two years. But
Oh, wow.
still, he's still being in the jail is just almost as violent as a prison. The only difference, you don't get that free time to go to the rec yard where you can maneuver and run over here on this side of the camp and run on this side. So you're confined. So when they're confined, you're still gonna be more prominent to fight because you got different behaviors you got to deal with when you're inside of the same area together. So there's no way to escape it. So I had to do a lot of mental talking to him and quoting a lot of scriptures. I also purchased the book, Right Path to Redemption, that Lester wrote. I sent that to him. He said that helped him a lot as well with the activities. So I've always taught him and trained him to stay away from yourself, stay away from others. If you get into prison or go to jail, stay away from the crowds. Don't try to fit in or blend in. Be yourself and stay kind of like to yourself. That's about the safest thing I can talk to him about, information that I can give him right now.
Yeah.
Okay. We have Miss Bonnie Pete Inman shared, my son apologizes almost every day for his actions. He also begs me to please stay alive until he gets out. It's extremely hard. I cry a lot when I'm alone.
It's heavy. I'm telling you. Yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy because you man, I can't believe I'm about to cry on this, Bob. But yeah, it's yeah, I'm just being honest with you guys. It's a heavy thing to be in prison and know that the crime that you committed has brought so much shame and humility on your parents. And now the fear of that you may die in prison and you may not, and the way that the prisons are set up, you can't go to the funeral of a loved one now, right? So
Yeah.
that's a fear, you know what I mean? That's a fear that affects us on both levels. So yeah, I understand. I'm pretty sure Calvin understands that as well because you've been in that system. You know what it feels like to do that. You know, you want to share a little bit before we go to the next topic?
Being that, like you said, Lester, being there and having my own grandmother and mother express to me time after time how much me being in there, hurt them. I remember my grandma telling me, I used to always call and end the conversation by saying, I'm good, I'm doing good, I'm okay. And I used to ask her, don't worry, I'm fine. And she would always tell me, as long as you are there, I would never rest. And that just used to just, eat me up because she said, as long as you are there, I'm never gonna be at peace. And and so she said, I would never be okay until you're home. So when I came home and started mentoring at risk youth, and part of that working with the courts, they're seeing kids to me who catch charges, and I mentor them. And unfortunately, I mentor some who may have to go on to prison. And part of that, I made another part of our mentoring program is the parenting part. I would sit down with the parent, and most of them would be mothers, and just trying to help them understand the process of what their child would face once they're incarcerated. And I can remember, and I'll just share this briefly, I can remember, guys, I was at court with a mother and her child, and unfortunately, the young man had to end up going on to prison. And so when he went through the door to go to the back, me and her was going out the courtroom, and she collapsed in my arm. And she just, she collapsed. And I just broke down because I never remember, I'm going through a door when I got sentenced. I never could see what happened to my parents when they leave out the courtroom. So when she collapsed in my arm, I just imagine my mom and my grandmother doing the same thing. I couldn't see it. So I was holding her, and she was crying, and I asked my daughter, I said, take a picture of this, film this for me. And I asked with her permission, could I use this in my mentoring? And so I took that for years, and I would show some of the kids that I was mentoring who, like Lester say, wasn't getting it. They were thinking that, what they were doing don't affect their parents, and it was about status and oppressing their friends more. And I played the video, and I said, look at what happened to a parent. You don't get to see this because you're going through another door, and you don't see what happened in the middle in that courtroom hallway. I said, this is what parents do. when they see their child, the one they love, the one they gave birth to, the one that has so many aspirations and dreams of doing something different. No parent raised their child and ever said, I'm gonna raise him to go to prison. And see that mother, she could not get it together. I mean, and it was okay that nobody bothered her. We might have stayed in that hallway for about an hour. She could not walk. She could not walk. And I let them see this. And this is what parents face. And I broke down. I'm getting emotional now because I thought about my parents and what they must have went through on the other side of that courtroom door where I can't see. And so it's hard. And for everyone that's watching, and the lady that commented on Dr. McDaniel's post, definitely know that, we're praying, and anything any of us on this panel can do to encourage you. If there's anything that you don't understand about the system, me and Lester definitely, also Miss Queen, we definitely will be glad to answer any questions, Miss Hart as well. We're here for them. We're definitely here for them. So I'm glad to be a part of this panel today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for that closing statement. That is very important. Your mental health is the most important thing that you can do. I have to say this. I have to stop and plug this in for everyone that is listening, everybody that's on this panel. Your mental health is very important, and if you and I don't stop to take caption of it, to begin to understand it, begin to understand how to process it, it can cause other issues. And so if this video and our topic is too overwhelming, I am going to ask you to step away, inbox myself or anyone, and we will support you through this, okay? The biggest thing that I share in my community and with all the women that we support through Rediscover Me is to help individuals to begin to understand your mind. And basically what Pastor Jones just shared was that the mother's mind went through a form of trauma. And it was that trauma that caused her to shut down, her organs shut down. And so what is happening to other parents is over a grace period of time that their body shut down. For this particular mother, it was an immediate impact, okay? So even having conversations about the experience, it is drawing up or forcing people that are on here to begin to remember, to begin to reflect, to begin to relate. And so as you are going through this, I am going to caution you and ask you to please make certain you practice mental safety. Your mental health is the most important thing that you have. If you are not good for yourself, you cannot be good for your loved ones. And I'm going to say it again. If you're not good for yourself, you cannot be good for your loved ones. And so again, if this is too much, I'm going to ask you to step back, inbox us, and we will support you and help you where you're at based on your capacity, okay? And so with that being said, we're going to try to move forward. And so, and we're going to dive a little deeper. The more and more we talk, it's going to be deep, okay? And so with this, I want to try to get an understanding for you guys to kind of share. How did this impact you mentally? How did it impact you mentally? I want from the guys, I want you to tell us, mentally going behind that jail cell. What was that like for you? And from the mothers, I want to get that, just what Pastor Jones was describing about this particular mother. I want you to think about yourself. And we're going to kind of throw it at Lester and then Mr. Jones, and then we'll come down to you ladies with April and Queen last, okay?
Great. Another great question. For me I always tell people, be honest. For me, in my immaturity at the time when I was sentenced and I went behind that door, I felt nothing. Because I didn't see the impact of my father and my three sisters crying. I didn't see that part of it. It was just like I was in my own little bubble, and it was about me proving to everyone else that I could do this life sentence, and not thinking about my whole family gonna be coming along on this life sentence that I'm gonna be doing. You know what I'm saying? So in that immature state of mind, it was just about, I was full of arrogance. It was about me, that I'm gonna do this time and I'm gonna go to prison. I'm just gonna do what I need to do. And I'm gonna show them that I can survive. This thing gonna hurt me, and not again thinking about what my father walked out when he walked out of that door. and my 3 sisters walked behind them who were very young, and they heard the judge say that your brother, Lester Young Jr., has been sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole in 20 years. And I wouldn't see, it was 1991, I wouldn't see a projected parole date in 2000 until 2012. Cannot even think about that with them, you know? So that was just my immaturity. And that's so many of our young people, when they go to prison and not thinking about that, went behind that door. They just thinking about, oh, how I'm gonna do this time, what I need to do. I got to get ready to go in, and not thinking about their parents who gave birth to them, who's gonna be there to send money to them for their canteen and come visit them. They never really think about that part of it, Miss McDonald. They really never think about it. Sometimes it's all about them in survival mode. We talking about a mental, you go straight into survival mode.
Pastor Jones.
Absolutely. I feel, I agree with Lester 100%. When I went, and I've been 4 times, and so each time going in it, you know, going back there, once I processed, I was going, and they transported me, and once my feet touched the Department of Correction ground, my mind zeroed into surviving and what it takes to navigate through that life, because that's a totally different life than out in the free world. And so my mind blanked away from family and how much they cared. And I think you get so zoned into that life of being in prison that, you know, none of this was injected in my mind to think about what the consequences was and how it was affecting my parents. So at times I can remember, you know, you got your parents going through this emotional, mental trauma because you were locked up. But because I was so tuned into the prison and how to make it back there, that I can look now and see how I mentally added more drama, because now you're taking the pressure that you got back there and you're calling home and you're taking it out on your parents who you're thinking they're out there and they're having fun and they're in the free world and you're back there locked up, and you get to this point where you can feel like, woe is me. You know, I'm in here, nobody care. So I can remember fussing at my mom them because they couldn't send me money, or I can remember they couldn't make it to come see me on visit, and I would fuss at them and I would hang up on, you know, in their face and say all kind of, you know, mean and hateful things to them, not realizing the pain and the hurt I caused them for just being there. I made them feel like it was their fault in a sense. I made them feel like when I couldn't get no canteen money or I didn't get no visit, it was their fault. And I look at this town and now and think about what I've done then. And yes, ma'am, it's just, it was tough.
Absolutely. I'm coming back to you, but I want to hear from Miss April Hart.
When my son was sentenced that day in court, I did not immediately break down. My daughter put her arms around me, and all I could hear her whispering in my ear is, "Mommy, you're so strong. You're so strong." And, you know, my mind is saying, I'm not strong. My breakdown was over a number of years. I had to process my feelings after trying to take care of my son. My son was in jail for 5 years before his trial. So when he was finally sentenced, I could finally release and grieve his going away, you know? And my situation is a touch more unique because my son is actually responsible for the death of his firstborn child. So I was actually grieving 2 people, my grandson and my son going away for life. During the 5 years, I kept thinking to myself, because, you know, in jail, they're behind the glass. I was like, oh, you know, when he does go to prison, I'll finally get to hug him. You know, I'll finally get a visit so I can put my arms around him. But it still, even after he was sentenced in 2013, took me 5 more years to physically go and see him in prison. You know, I wanted that hug, but I had to go through my process first of, you know, when he was arrested, you put your immediate personal stuff on hold because you have to help your child. But I actually went through, this is crazy. I'm mad at you. I had to pull my forgiveness back and work through all of that. You just go through all the myriad of emotions, and then you finally come back to forgiveness. And through all of this, you're still trying to talk to your child. I couldn't, he would call on the phone, but I'm still crying. I couldn't write letters because the emotions were just too much, So I physically did not get to see my child, hug my child for 10 years, from the time he was arrested to the time I made my first visit. That's just how heavy these emotions were on me, and your day-to-day life doesn't stop. You still got the same struggles with your child in prison. And as I said, my son, he's a sweet young man. So I'm worrying about what's happening to him in prison. Is he's going to be able to survive and take care of himself? He's in there for life.
Yeah. Listen, I'd like to say something. That is pretty, like, I like how you unpack that, because most parents need to have a term define that. You really just gave definition to it when you said grief, because that's what happens is when a loved one goes to prison, you go through a grieving process. And a lot of guys, like Kelvin said, he's on the phone screaming like, why are you not sending me money? Why are you not doing this? Not understanding that your parents is grieving your separation from them. They're grieving. And depending upon the nature of the crime, it's now they got to wrap their heads around the fact that you committed a crime that is, I don't agree with, and you committed it, and how am I going to love you still as my son or my daughter? That's really important that people understand that as a loved one, you go through a grieving process. Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Hart. I think that's going to help a lot of parents understand, but this is, again, I think that we have to find a way, Ms. McDonald, is to share this. How do we
Absolutely.
share with the men inside of the prison system? Because they need to hear that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. That's important.
That's very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ms. Queen.
Yes, this is a road.
I'm going to let you take your time and do what you need for yourself. Take your deep breaths and all the things that we practice. And it is okay.
This is part of the process that I don't visit a lot of the time, because it was Mother's Day when I got the call that my son actually committed a robbery, which was super devastating because I had him here. And as you know, he refused to do what was right here. So we had to send him back to Alabama. But in the midst of it, I remember once getting that phone call, how angry I got with his dad, because he was there in Alabama and he had no business roaming in Opelika with not a for sure safe haven. So that part of me made me I was so bitter and so angry. It took me for probably up until this year just to even forgive his own father for not stepping up after I had him here and tried to put him on the right track, and had to send him home due to doing stuff here he shouldn't have been doing. But it happened on a Friday. I heard about it a Saturday. I kind of went into a mental shutdown and a panic mode the rest of the weekend. I didn't talk to him until that following Monday, when I was actually able to put money on a card to talk to him. Luckily, and the sad part about it, I was actually at work on a break, and once I stepped out and heard his voice and he was crying on the phone, and I kind of asked him, what were you thinking and what happened? he was crying. He was like, at that point, well, it don't even matter, Mama. I'm sorry I did it. He wished me a happy Mother's Day, which you all know it wasn't nothing happy about that Mother's Day weekend. But I just remember blocking everything out and thinking, okay, I've heard his voice. It is true. This is something I got to deal with. But at the same time, I'm at work on the clock, got to go back to work and just put aside what I just actually heard, that my child actually admit to me that he's committed a robbery. The whole weekend I was thinking it was just a mix-up. But I remember calling the jail and they telling me, yeah, he did it. And it don't look good. He's on $1 million bond. And I remember the guy that talked to me, he was so nasty. He was so nasty and so inconsiderate when he went ahead and told me what was what and what he was facing. And I just remember thinking in my head, Lord, what am I going to do? I don't have anybody I can turn to, or I don't know anybody I can actually talk to. And he's in a town where there's a ton of racism. I don't even know who I could begin to get to even go up against people like this in the system. But I just remember going back into the job, breaking down to one of my security officers at the desk, and thank God she's a mighty woman of God. She just got me and held me and just kept telling me it's gonna be all right. She said, my baby did 18 years. She said, I promise you it's gonna be okay. She said, don't look like it now, but your child is gonna be just fine. So she was able to calm me down. They could see what was happening from the cameras out of town by looking at the security cameras. People were coming out of the office, but she assured me everything was okay. But up until this day, she still talks to me and keeps in touch with me and assures me to stay prayerful and that everything is going to be okay. But that was a hard day for me, actually getting to talk to him, and had to go back to work and finish a day's work with that kind of news embedded in my head, being that, I have experience working in a prison. My mind was everywhere. Is he gonna live? Because 9 times out of 10, when our Black boys go to prison in this day and age, you can almost count on your hand the ones that are actually be able to come out and be a blessing to somebody else. Because I know firsthand what happens in prisons in Alabama. That think they're slapping in here in South Carolina. So, it's always a fear with me. Every day is a constant fear. I've just learned how to tuck it away and deal with it when I'm through with everything else on my everyday task or my everyday list. I deal with that later on. But it's always, I'm able to kind of tuck it away now until I need to deal with it.
Okay. Thank you so much for your bravery and for sharing. There's so much I want to go in and say, but I want to kind of stick to the topics. Lester, I don't know if you're like I am, but it's just like, the more we talk, the more I want to ask questions, but I want to be, cognitive of our time, and I want to be respectful of everyone. Okay. And so with this next question, I want to find out, we understand where you ladies are, where you are, gentlemen. Let's go into the courtroom. Let's go into the courtroom, because here is a place where you are surrounded with, at times, people that don't look like you, people that haven't been through the experiences you have been through, people who read a document and based on that document define you as an individual, as a human being. And I want to start with Pastor Jones. What is that like from that perspective, being inside of the courtroom?
It's terrifying. It's terrifying when I can remember going into the courtroom and you're looking around and everybody is stern face, no face, like I said, nobody looked like us that's in position to decide whether or not you walk out of that courtroom. And you're sitting there and I'm trembling. I'm shaking, I'm nervous, I'm very scared. It's an unbelievable feeling. That's when I think reality starts to set in and you realize how much trouble you're really in. And everybody is, you're trying to look through the faces to see if you can just connect with somebody that at least just smile, and nobody's smiling. And you're sitting there saying, oh, wow, now things are starting to come to light. Now what your parents told me and how they tried to tell me that, boy, this day is here now. And, you know, you're feeling all of it. So you're getting emotional. I couldn't even talk when they was trying to get me to answer questions. I was just really so shaken. And everybody, like I said, stern face, and they're serious, and they're talking legal talk, and I don't understand what they're saying. And best I can do is look to my public defender, and they're saying, you going to jail, you know, just say yeah, just say no. And you just, and I glanced back at my parents, you know, grandparents, which was my mom and my grandmother and my grandfather. I looked back at them one time, and I could see they were saying that they was feeling the same way. They're looking around. They're seeing the makeup. And all of the people that look like us are in the defendant box. And everybody else is stern faced, they're serious. And I'm looking back and I can see them nervous, but they're trying their best to look confident for me. They're trying their best. And my grandma gave me a couple of looks like, it's gonna be okay. And then the sentence come down. I can remember when I got sentenced to that life sentence, that right during the trial, my grandfather started having a heart attack. He was having problems, health problems already. And the pressure of it, because, you know, when you're there in the courtroom, and like I said, they only got a documentation to go by, and their job is to convict. So they're gonna make you look like the worstest person in the world, and they do it in front of your parents and your loved ones. And so now you done brought yourself into a courtroom, you done brought your family into a courtroom, and now the real ugliness, the thing that, you know, you didn't really tell your parents. I didn't really share a lot of stuff with my parents on what happened. Now it's all out in the open. Now they're looking at me and saying, is this my child that these people are talking about? And my grandfather couldn't take it. And as he was having a heart attack, the best they did was pause the trial, removed him out into the hallway, brought me back in, and sentenced me to life while he was in the hallway. But they were still working on him in the hallway when my life sentence came down. And you know, my grandmother, she's trying to get to my grandfather, want to be by his side, but her love for me, she's want to be right there too. So she's in between the doorway, looking at my grandfather and listening. And when they said life, I seen her grab the door. But the people who didn't look like us did not move. There was no compassion. It was nothing. And I was whisked off to the back.
Thing I want to just point out too is, like you said, in the courtroom, it's not really about the offender, the person who's being charged. It's about what's being revealed in the courtroom that you didn't tell your parents or your loved one that you actually did. So when that indictment is read and they start reading out everything, this is where now a parent who was talking to their loved one in the county facility over phone, they're denying all of the accusation because they're not aware that when they go into this courtroom, that they're going to read out every crime, everything. So now the parent who had some sense of belief that, oh, my son may be innocent or is not as bad as the media says, that courtroom exposes your son or your loved one for all of the things, some of the most horrible things that you never imagined your son doing. They have that information now. And now a mother, going back again to Miss Hart, the grief process comes in, is how do I process loving this person who I was convinced that didn't really do what they said he did, and now it's coming out that he did do it this way. So that's really heavy for me too, you know? So I just wanted to unpack that as we go to the next panelist.
Ms. Hart, share with us from that perspective, the courtroom.
My son never did deny that he did what he did. He was raised to tell the truth. If you tell the truth, we can work it out and get you through it. So he never did deny anything. He never did try to hide anything. The courtroom, you do have a lot of other people that are not like you that are looking at you, and they have you under a microscope. again, like I said, as a parent, you try to raise your child a certain way. My son was facing the death penalty or life in prison with no parole. And even though me as a parent, I'm talking to the lawyers, I'm saying, can you investigate this? Mental health, can you investigate this? You know, some things he had happened during the, he had enrolled in the Navy. You know, if they're just knocking down everything, your option, you're trying to help your child. My child's defense for his case so that he wouldn't get the death penalty was learned behavior. He learned how to beat his child from his mother.
Mm.
Okay. And that's the only defense that the lawyers are willing to put on. That's just what it is. At the time of his trial, I think live PD had just come out. So there was cameras in the courtroom. Luckily, I had asked the judge to remove the media from the courtroom, and he allowed it for whatever reason. And I'm thankful, because to see this come back on camera years later would definitely kill me. So the media was removed. But again, on top of that grief process, you have your son's defense of learned behavior. So I have to get on court and say, yes, I beat my child. Yes, I did this. Yes, I did that. And you have your support team, your family in the courtroom with you, friends or whoever that came support you, saying, you know, was this really going on in your household? No, it really wasn't, not to that degree. But, you know, I became the villain in order to save my son from the death penalty. And I don't mind carrying that flag, because I'm going to do what I need to do to save my child. But it's once the trial is over, you got these eyeballs on you, like, so you were the worst person in the world. You raised a monster, you know? You just deal with things like that. Like I said, the defense attorneys, they and that's what they want to see, because they're not like us. They have their own trauma, their own tragedies, whatever, but they're still not like ours. So it's like, you know, you're saying to yourself, I'm not a bad person. My child is not a bad person, but this is what's going to save his life, you know? So it was a struggle dealing with those lawyers. I actually had to deal with 2 sets of lawyers, because the first set of lawyers were 2 white ladies, and they were so rude and disrespectful to me. I mean, they would cuss in front of me and everything. They just were not professional at all. So you just deal with a lot in the courtroom, in the judicial system, you know, with people who don't really understand your, not necessarily my upbringing, but, you know, our life as a whole. They don't want to see.
Ms. Hart, I'm going to say my heart goes out, and I'm sorry that you had to experience that. I want to throw something at Lester before I go to Queen. Do you think the terminology that is used in our court systems, and I'm asking you because of the work you do from a professional perspective, and I know language is very important, and the structure of language has a massive impact. Do and so that's where I'm going with that, with the language of a court.
I agree. I think like when we're talking about language, the whole intent of using the word offender, victim, all of these terms are to continue to add to that dehumanizing aspect of that person, to just strip them of their dignity, strip them of who they were raised to be, strip them of that to justify the severity of the sentence, to make, every time you look at some of these individuals, when you look at local news, it's always projected in a dehumanizing way. They find the worst incident of a situation and they they expand that or explode that to create this dehumanizing way. So I truly believe language is important, and we have to work on, in the judicial system, changing the language and how to refer to these individuals. And not only that, but the media. The media plays a very important role in how they describe an individual, and they always go to the worst description of that person and not really adding the human side to that person. That's a
Absolutely.
great question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Queen, do you mind enlightening us about your experience?
My experience was similar to April's as far as looking at people with no feeling on their face. And me, I wasn't surrounded with a full courtroom. When I would go to court in Alabama, I would see maybe 3 parents, and we all pretty much had the same look on our face, a look of uncertainty and a look of not knowing. Because at the time we started out with a public defender as well, and she too, she was a female, white, but as a parent, I didn't feel she connected to me and understood how I was feeling when I would call and ask certain questions about my son. She gave me as little information as she possibly could. And it went from that to, I don't have to talk to you. I defend your son and not you. And it was a lot. And I remember hearing some of the judges in the back that weren't really doing trials, but just sitting in. I noticed they call our black boys little piggies. We're gonna see how many little piggies we can put away today. They looked at it as it was like a chess game to them. So that part kind of made me real angry in court. But you know, at the time, my heart really went out to the rest of the mothers that had to just deal with the public defenders. But when I heard the little game they were playing in the courtroom that day, I made it my business. And I said I wasn't gonna stop until I found my son an attorney that could represent him. Because I wasn't gonna let him go out like one of the little piggies they had set up for the other ones to do. One couldn't happen, not on my watch. But I remember seeing the lifeless looks on everybody else's face. They could have cared less. Their goal was to see how many they could sentence for that day. And I guess going and rejoice behind it later on. It was just, to me, and my experience in the courtroom in Alabama was a game of chess. It was almost like a Game of Thrones without the inmates, basically. That's pretty much how I look at it. They took it as a game. So we can all just sum it up as if they had no feeling as far as what was happening. They were just there to do their job, sentence you if they could sentence you to the max and be done with it.
You know, another thing too, I noticed in the courtroom is the language. Not just human language, but legal terms. Most family, almost 95, 98% of the family members go into the courtroom, as well as the individuals who is charged, go in ignorant about the law, the procedures, everything. They go in not knowing anything. So here it is, you hearing a whole lot of terminologies and maximum, minimum, concurrent, non-concurrent, and you're trying to understand, like, what does this really mean? Like, what do you mean you just sentenced my son to 10 years consecutive and all of these different things? So I always tell families, you know, and that this is something on a sidebar, is that I really think that in our community, we need to become better educated about these particular terms, so that, especially, you know, you have a loved one that is already facing a prison sentence or awaiting a trial. We need to create more forms in our community to at least help us understand the terminology, so that you don't go in a courtroom, or that you can better inform your son. Because public defenders, in my book, in my opinion, are some of the worst individuals when it comes down to, some of them are, because it's all about a number game. It's all about how many I can get to go to court so that I can look good as I get a promotion. You know what I'm saying? Some public offenders are really just looking at a number game, because think about it, they underpaid, they got over on their docket, they may got over 200 people on their docket, and your son may be 199th person on that docket, that they can't spend a lot of time and energy in getting that person or trial prepared. That's why it's a lot of plea deals versus a lot of jury trials.
2008 wasn't an election year.
Yeah. So.
Yes. Before we're gonna make a little bit of a shift, but I want to go back to Pastor Jones, because he made a statement about you know, when he described going behind, you know, the parents leaving out the front, and he, you know, and the inmate going behind a you know, exiting one door and the parents exiting another, excuse me. And so, and then you go into the survival mode, and you're not thinking or caring. And he says, you don't think about how much your family cares. So I want to stop right there before we move forward. And Pastor, it made me think about today's youth.
Right.
It made me think about the degree that all of our forms of media is bombarded with negativity. All of this going into that mindset and causing our children, causing our young adult children to be engulfed, you know. And then on top of that, I also think about from the perspective of a lot of individuals my family members engage with who there's a lot of negativity, and I spend more time trying to diffuse the mindset of thinking that everybody hates you, you know. So I want to go back there and let's look at it. To what degree this mindset is going to, you know, if our child is caught up in a situation, will automatically go to that mindset of nobody loves me, nobody cares about me, nobody is supporting me, not even my mom loves me. You know, how do we get to that place?
But like I said, today's youth got so much social media and so many different ways they can feed their mind with negativity through rap music. Not all rap music is bad, but I'm just saying that's one of the funnels. That's one of the main streams that they listen to. And dealing with youth and talking to them, mentoring them, it's a big challenge. I found it to be a big challenge every month, you know, as the time goes on to progress. The mindset is just so wrapped into entitlement. They feel so entitled now, and so you know, it's it's never their fault. You know, it's something. In some ways, the mind is switched, and it's always an excuse why I did this and why I do that, and this person to blame. The mom that's working the best she can, the mom that is only one present in the person's life. I ask them sometimes, who you think pay the light bill? Who you think pay the water bill, man? Who you think get the food that you have to eat? She can't buy you the Jordans. We did a program where I teach them the numbers, and I teach them to break down what it is when a parent makes this amount of money, and after taxes, this was come home at the end of the week. This is the rent or the mortgage. This is the car payment. This is the insurance. This is gas. This is food. This is some of your clothing. When you break all that down, I said, do you see what's left? And now in that little bit that's left, because your friend has a pair of Jordans, you feel like you got to have a pair. And if you can't get it, you can't squeeze it from where it's not at. So when they can't, a lot of times I've noticed when the teens can't get what they want, the new iPhones, they have a phone, but they want the new one. Then if they can't get it, the parent is automatic the enemy, automatically. So they go and they react and they go out and they do things, and they're not thinking about what is the pain that is causing them and it's causing the parent. They just think about themselves. And I watched that over and over again. But then when they get in some trouble, and now we're trying to work through it, and the parent, I said, the same parent that you are mad at, that you're telling me that you went and did this because of, she's right here. She's the one that got you right here in this program. She's the one that's down to the courthouse, talking to the solicitors, talking to the lawyers. That same one. And you're still not getting it. You're still fussing that up there. It's just amazing, the negativity that they go through and not knowing that the parent, that one parent, is doing the best that they can.
Thank you so much for that. I want to go, as we are shifting, two-part questions, ladies and gentlemen. How did this affect your, you know, the situation with the family, the loved one that is incarcerated? How did that affect the family? And to what degree did you find yourself having to support the families instead of having taken the time you needed to mentally process and compartmentalize your own feelings? Start with Queen, please.
For me, that really wasn't a big issue because I'm here and my family is back in Alabama. I have family here, but I can't say it didn't affect them. If it did, they didn't really show it, but it wasn't as big of an impact as it would have been if my son had left home and had like siblings in home with us, per se. So it was basically me he left. So it all kind of affected more so me. Not saying it didn't affect anyone else, but me presently being right here, I know for a fact it affected me a great deal, and it affected his godmother as well. Here, I didn't have to take time from my mental stress to deal with her. She was always trying to check on me and see if I was okay, or she was that ear for me whenever I would wake up at night and couldn't sleep, or was too stressed to sleep, or just wanted to head dump or just cry. She was that ear here for me, as far as what it did to her. If it affected her in a mental state, she really didn't show it, or she didn't let me see it. So I didn't have that part to really deal with. It was mainly just so me dealing with how I was going to go on and still be okay and be that supportive person I needed to be to him while he's away for right now.
Thank you so much for that. April?
My son's incarceration has affected his siblings very much because, as I said, he's the oldest. So they looked up to him for, to model certain behavior. Just even to talk to, he was my baby son's confidant. And my baby son is 6 years younger than he is. So, he looked to him as a supportive older brother. Again, he's my oldest child. So I looked to him for support and to quite honestly help me do the things that I needed to do and get done. If one of his siblings needed a ride to work, I expected he had a car to try to get him to work. So Andre's being away has definitely, we feel that presence not there, and it's hard. It's very hard. And I don't know if I answered the second part of your question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And Lester, did you want to add any to this?
Yeah, I agree with him. My thing is not really, yeah, it's like, I think it's important that, like, when you ask us how does it affect the family, it really affects the family in a deep way. When I look at my three sisters to this day, and we had just a siblings trip, and this is when we were riding, and they started telling me the pain that I caused them. Like, bro, you wasn't there for me. You wasn't there when I had a boyfriend and I needed somebody to check this dude out to make sure he was going to respect me. I didn't have a big brother to look out for me. I didn't have a big brother to call on. So it forced me to, my three sisters, they have a real closer bond because that's all they had, you know what I mean? As far as siblings are concerned, but it affects them in a way that you never can imagine. And I always tell people this: when your loved one's incarcerated, we never have that conversation while they're incarcerated about the impact. And what I mean by that, I call it, when I was in prison, I used to teach class and I used to tell them, like, when you go and visit, what do your family do when they go and visit? What do you do when you go see your son? You go to the vending machine and you get all of the food and you just dump the food on the table. And guess what happens in the conversation? Oh, baby, you like that hamburger? Oh, yeah, Ma, thank you. And you never really unpack it because, again, you don't want to pull that scar back to address it. So you walk out of that visitation room feeling a sense of comfort that you physically saw him, but you didn't have an opportunity to share your grief with that person. So we have to create more safe space to have these conversations, especially when that person gets out of prison. Because if you don't share it if you don't find a healthy place to release it, guess what happens? It's going to explode when they walk out of prison, because you've been departmentalizing it for so long. But it's going to happen because you didn't find a healthy way to release it. It may explode in the wrong way on someone else, or it may explode when that person comes home from prison. It may explode on a phone call. it's going to find its way out. And I'm pretty sure you agree with me, Miss Doctor, is that it's going to find a way out. And we can't just keep putting it, packing it somewhere. It may show up in your workplace. It may show up in your marriage. It may show up in your relationship. It may show up in the relationship with your children. We can't keep dumping a lot of food on the table to create distractions. We got to unpack that stuff. And this is why this conversation is so important, so we can understand that it's there. Let's see the elephants in the room now. Now we need to go ahead and figure out how do we address this going forward so you can be healthy in other relationships and don't feel like that stuff is spilling over in that relationship, that your present relationship, whatever that may look like.
That's very important. Pastor Jones,
Yes.
I'm going to revert your question slightly. Just piggybacking off of Lester and what he shared. How do we do that? How do we create that framework where an individual who is incarcerated and the family members can begin the healing process before reentry? How do we create that process to be, to set this place and space? Because I'm sharing this, I'm asking Pastor Jones because of the work he does within his community. How do we do that and create this? And I call it safe place. We always call it safe place. In this safe place, we're going to, you heard Queen Woods use the word head dump. That's something that in our Rediscover Me community, we talk about head dumping. We throwing everything out. It doesn't mean that it's going to look pretty. It doesn't mean that I'm really saying things to hurt you. It's just that it's here, it's muck, it's pressed down in the back, and we need to bring it front. We need to get it out so that way we can throw it all out on the floor and look at it and then begin to go through it and break it down and then receive. But I know it'll take a lot of training, but just off the top of your head, how would we create that framework?
I think we'll start with all the groups such as Miss Queen, Miss April, Lester, yourself. This is right here. This webinar is just phenomenal. This is where it starts right here. And all the people that are watching, we'll all get comments back. I'm sure we'll get some feedback once we all get off. And we take all of that. We take what I'm doing, because I got a pathway to parents and those that are incarcerated. Lester does, as well as Miss Queen, Miss April, and yourself, and all the other connection and partnerships we got with other ministries and nonprofits that are involved with some form of incarceration ministry, and we get together. And because we got that contact directly with the parent, we got the contact directly with the with those that are incarcerated, and we form something. We have to. We get together and we form a committee, and we come as one, because I'm doing something over here, somebody's doing something over there, somebody's doing something over there, and we all could just bring it all together as one, and look at what we really need, what's really done, and that's just so important. Is talking with the parent and connecting them with those that are incarcerated and having this conversation. Because I never had this conversation with my parents. I agree exactly with what Lester said. That was all I got. They bring up, they get the food out of the vending machine, they give it to me, I eat it. We talk a little bit about who doing this, who doing that. We gossip. That's what we do. We gossip about who doing what, make a couple laughs. We try not to be emotional, because the parting part is emotional itself when you have to say goodbye. So you're not trying to talk about nothing down, nothing emotional.
Right.
But am I right, Miss Queen? You're trying not to, because you don't want to set them off. I guess the parent don't want to set the child off, because they don't want to send him back there and he's emotional and he may go get in some trouble because he can't handle it. And so we have to look at that part of it, because it can get emotional, and you only have a small frame between the visit that you can kind of unpack some stuff. So we just have to find a way to structure it. So when they are on visit, or maybe when they are on the phone talking or through a letter, they kind of start slowly. We have to help them slowly start the conversation, because we don't want to trigger the person that's behind, because for me to hear it from my grandmother or my mom, how much I'm hurt them by being there. I need to hear it, but maybe not all at one time, because by not being able to process it all at one time, it may spiral me off in a negative way. But I do need to hear it, because I'm before we got to this program, this forum today, I never had that conversation. And when I came home, I was right back. When you get home, they want you to get a job, you know, and get back in the flow of things, and you still don't have the conversation.
Right.
Because you running. As soon as you get home, you're trying to get a job. If you got kids, you're trying to connect with them. You're trying to get back into society, the flow of society, that you still miss that conversation.
But this is why I think that this is important. And just before we go on, I want to make sure this is where the safe space have to relationships with the Department of Corrections. It cannot be a space in a visitation room. When we're talking about rehabilitation, when we're talking about healing, when we're talking about emotionally healing, restoring things back into a parent, into an individual who's incarcerated, this is where the Department of Correction has to come in and create these safe spaces in the prison chaplains, where parents not having it in an open space environment, where they can now go to these small places and have these conversations because they need to heal. A parent, a loved one needs to hear, like, bro, son, you hurt me. This is why I didn't see you in 10 years. And you have to be willing to accept that from your parents so that they can move on. Because the longer you're not able to have that real conversation, as I said, you're hurting yourself as a parent. Or whoever that person is, you're hurting yourself emotionally, mentally. So this is something, you know, that the framework has to be in the Department of Corrections. They have to be thinking about this. And I think that when we had this conversation, here's a very new conversation. And now we're in South Carolina. This may be a conversation me and McDowell need to mention to the Department of Correction, create a syllabus or some type of thing in place so that the Department of Correction could implement a rehabilitation program like this, where parents and their sons or their daughters need to have this real conversation so that they can heal. And so that while they're in prison, they can now take ownership for what they've done and understand the impact, the severe impact that it had on their loved one. And I think that that's something that would allow that person to heal better and definitely give that parent a little more freedom and a little more breathing room other than being in a visitation with 200 people. And yeah, the only thing you got on that table is snacks. But if you're in a private place for a short period of time, over a course of time, you can begin this process. And this is what prison is all about. And this is uniqueness of this conversation here and what we are putting together, that this is a framework that we can present in future times to a Department of Correction, why this is so important, just from these stories right here.
Thank you so much for sharing. Just a moment, I want to let everyone know that is on Facebook. We are not overlooking your what you're sharing. Thank you guys for supporting each other. And I'm reading everything that you're sharing, and Lester's reading as well. And we do see your comments. And our heart goes out to you as well and what you've had to experience. And so we thank you for sharing the videos. We thank you for participating. We're going to move a little bit forward because of time. And I'm so grateful and honored that our guest has given us their time this morning, because they see the importance of what this is bringing to you and to our loved ones. We see the importance of that. So want to look at presently now. How are we coping, everyone? How are we coping? How are you coping being back in society? How are you coping with your sons that are behind bars? How are you keeping your mental capacity strong and you're able to breathe? Because as Miss April just described, you have to tell yourself to breathe. You have to tell yourself they're okay. You have to remind yourself, I prayed and I've covered my child. But how do we cope daily? How are you keeping your mental capacity strong? I can't hear you.
Well, one of the things that I am using to cope with is to write it out, to write my story. The first, I have a chapter in an anthology with 15 other women, and it's called Embracing Change to Pursue Purpose. Well, you're having a child go to prison is a huge change. And it has brought about the purpose of what I'm here, doing today, to help parents who are struggling with that mental side of dealing with a child that's incarcerated. That's basically it, you know, like giving a voice to what's going on. That helps me.
Thank you so much, Queen.
You know, as you know, I'm also a journalist as well. So I do a lot of writing now because a lot of this will be added to the book that I'll be writing soon. I do a lot of writing, a lot of praying, and I have a great church family that always uplifts me and give me different scriptures to go to. And I just stand on what it is I've been taught to stand on when it comes to the word. I think that's what has kept me so far. And might I say, my son's stepfather has been he has played a great role in my son being incarcerated as well. Because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't even have the attorney we had now. But he talks to him a lot. I talk to my son, but I have found a space where I can kind of let him know how I feel. I didn't do it all at once. One day I remember we was having a conversation about something, and he was doing similar to like Pastor Jones said he would do sometimes. On the phone going off, call himself going off on me about something he wanted and why I didn't send it. And I tried to explain to him my situation. And I also told him, I said, furthermore, what makes you think you are worthy of me giving you my last and not taking care of what I need to take care of here? Because I know you gotta be fed. They gotta have somewhere for you to lay your head. And what you're wanting now can kind of wait. And do you actually realize how much you've caused me grief and how embarrassed I am at this point of what you've done? But I remember having a conversation with him again a couple of days later. He was like, I hurt his feelings when I told him I was embarrassed of him. And I told him I didn't say it to hurt you. I told you, I'm trying to let you know how what you have done has impacted me. It's nothing that I can say I'm proud of because I didn't raise you that way. And when I kind of broke it down to him, he understood it more. And that's when he started opening up and apologizing more and said, well, I kind of see where you're coming from now. Because how would you feel if I did something and everybody telling you, you know, your mom did this or your mom did that? And that would impact you. I said, now, do you kind of see now where I'm coming from when it comes to you? Because you wasn't raised the way I see you act sometimes, or some of the things I see you do. So he kind of gets the picture. So we've kind of opened that door as far as me kind of letting him know what impact it has had on me. And I constantly have to remind him of it financially. Sometimes he will brush it off, but now he's starting to listen a little more when I talk to him about it. So he's not as apprehensive to say he want what he want when he wants it. He'll ask now, and I'll just tell him whenever I'm able, I would do this, or I would do that. Or I can't do this right now, but this is what we'll do, and I'll come back and do that later. So we kind of got that. We got a better understanding of that now. So hadn't had any hiccups with bad phone calls or hang-ups or him losing it over the phone. We've kind of put that to rest right now.
Important.
Absolutely. I want to go back. I had actually marked this question out, but Queen brought up a very good statement. And I want to, you know, because Lester and Pastor Jones has made a massive transition in their reentry. I want to go back and ask the question about, you know, being received by society during your reentry, and family members, you know, and we have a tendency of, as human beings, to, as I started out sharing with you, is not looking at the person, but, you know, what was that bad thing he did? They were incarcerated, so, you know, you don't need to be with them. You know, how were you received by family members once you re-entered? You've made a massive change, and I'm very proud to see all of this, the work that you do. So, you know, how did you get that? Who was that support person? How did you, you know, block all of these images of your past that came from people? How did you do that?
For me, it was the 22 years of visitation with my family. And my father always emphasized to me, like, son, I'm going to do this bid with you. I'm going to come see you as often as I can. I'm going to send you money. But boy, if you get out of prison and you don't uphold your promise and the way I raised you, I'm going to prison. He's like, I'm not gonna allow you to come out here and cast shame on me again. So for me, it was about taking that promise I gave to my dad that, yo, I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna do right, has been the influence for me. You know, my father just recently passed away, and it's been one of those things where I felt like for the last 6 years of him here, he saw that I pulled my promise. You know, like every conversation I would have with my father is like he would walk when we would be different places. He'll walk because his son was gone for 22 years. And now his son's here. Everybody, you know, only my 3 sisters, they knew he had a son, but they didn't know he had a son because they never saw him. And he'll be like, hey, my son's in prison. And I finally came home, and where I would go places at the church or wherever I'm at, my father would have a different scrut. He like, yo, this is my son right here. You know what I'm saying? So that made me feel good to know that I'm doing something to make this man proud. I'm his namesake. I'm named after my father. So it made me feel good. And that's what motivates me every day. And then on top of that, I have a victim, a family that I caused a lot, not only my immediate family, but I took another human being life. So now I got to deal with that trauma as well, from them seeing me get out of prison and their loved one is physically no longer here. So for me, I have to live in an upright way to honor them, so that anytime they pull me up on social media, they see something good. And this was one of the things that went into one of the family members forgiving me. He was like, man, for a long, I didn't want nothing to do with you, Lester. He said, you took my brother's life. And he said, I didn't want nothing to do with you. But he said, I saw a video that you had posted one time and I saw it. He said, what you were representing at that moment in that video changed my heart. He says that he was the one that really advocated for my pardon. So when people ask me about my rehabilitation, my transition, I'm honoring my immediate family and honoring the victim's family. Like I want them to never see me saying, we gave you a chance and look what you did. He said, I would have never forgave you, Lester, if I would have saw something on your Facebook page or any of your social media handles where you're glamorizing the lifestyle that you once lived. And that meant a lot to me. And that's the thing that I'm really focused on, is honoring them. And that keeps me tunnel vision about every other rejection and criticism is about honoring these two families, my family and my victim's family.
Thank you. Pastor Jones.
When I throughout each incarceration, my mother and my grandmother was definitely my support team. And on the 4th time going to prison, my mother had recently passed, so it was just enough now on my grandmother. And she supported me through that one, you know, even though I was wrong in all 4 times, you know, she in her eyes, I could never do wrong. So when I came home, you know, and I've started making this transformation, this change, going into this life, she supported me all the way up until her death. And it was just, a lot of people didn't, you know, I had a very, very rough past. So a lot of people didn't forgive. A lot of people said because I've been so many times that they don't believe, you know, what I'm doing is authentic and I'll go back. It's just a matter of time. You know, he's going to fold, he's going to crumble, he's not going to make it. And this came from a lot of family members, and it hurt one time. You know, I even had a personal close, my brother one time even actually told me that it won't last long, you'll be back, you know. So dealing with that and so every little mistake, not like crime, but this little mistake would put you on edge because you know so many people are watching you and you're thinking any little thing I do, I'm a fail. And they're looking for me to go back. So my grandmother would always just she see me discouraged, she would always just keep saying, listen, I know you can do it. I know you can become the man that we know you can be. You're just gonna have to keep doing it. You're gonna have a lot of hurdles to cross because of your past. You're gonna have to just keep doing it. And when she got to where cancer was taking over, and it was a matter of days, and I was in the kitchen, we had her home with us, and she needed something, and my wife went to take care of her. And I was getting up, but I was preparing a sermon because I just had started ministering. And this was the last thing she said. Last thing I heard her say before, and then a couple hours later, she slipped on into glory. She told my wife, because I was getting up to come, and my wife said, well, Kelvin is on his way down the hall. She said, no. Tell him to continue preaching. And she closed her eyes. And I took that as no matter what nobody else say, you know, I'm gonna continue to do that. I'm gonna continue to move forward. And I'm still been home 18 years, and it's people remember. It's people remember when. And so what I did is what helps me to cope is I took my message, my mess, and made it a message. And I created this line, and I mostly have it on it, but today the game consequence I got to support.
Really, bro?
Yeah.
Really?
Today.
I was wondering why you had that shirt on.
Hey, Lester, you remember them, don't you? They still play. But yes, man, I took it and I made a message out of my mess, and my clothing line is called Focus Life, and that's what I do. You know, I wear it, and it just keeps me focused. You know, I understand I did some wrong, and it's a lot of people that may still don't forgive, but what helps me cope being out here. I face a lot of challenges, having so many convictions, and a lot of times, a lot of doors that I want to go through are closed. But I just keep knowing that doing the right thing is the right thing.
Like that. Doing the right thing is the right thing. I intentionally asked this question because, you know, for the mothers, I shared this in the beginning, and Lester and I have had this heart to heart. When, as a mother, we have an intimate relationship with our child. That child is a part of us. We fed that child for 9 months before it ever came. We've loved a human being that we've never seen before. We've protected it at all costs, you know. And so when we think of, you know, and so it's very hard for us to perceive what society or even our family members are saying that are negative, even if our child is out there doing something wrong. I want to throw that part out because there's also this other thing that I tell my family. This is me. I know what God told me that my child was going to become. I know what God told me my child was going to become, and it was my job to guide them to get there. It didn't mean that they were not going to have obstacles. It just means that I know you, and I know that you're better than that. And so, you know, and ladies, you know, from a mother's perspective, what message can you leave with other mothers and other family members, starting with April? You know, what message would you like to leave with these, the individuals that are on here from a mother's perspective, with an incarcerated child? Unmute yourself again, April. Excuse me. Unmute yourself.
And
okay, start back over, April. I'm sorry, start back over.
My phone was ringing. I'm sorry. One of the emotions that I initially felt didn't deal with well was, you know, when you're a parent, you want to say how proud you are of your children. And I had to not find that proud moment for my son in prison, because I'm always proud of him, but to fight not feeling guilty for being proud of him, you know? So just always support your child, you know, even as if he's home, you know, even though he's in prison, just view it, it helps me that to view that he's like in another state versus, you know, just incarcerated. I'm sorry, that phone call just threw me way off.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I understand. Queen, do you mind sharing with the viewing audience on social media from your perspective?
Yes, from my perspective as a mother with an incarcerated child, I always emphasize how much your child is loved. And I always emphasize to my son as well, how if maybe you wasn't in jail, you probably would be dead. You was going down the wrong path. Sometimes God has a way of getting our attention, whether it's pretty or ugly. He's going to get your attention if he needs to get it. But I have to tell him at the end of the day, don't focus on what they've done or focus on what you preparing them to do. And I always tell them to keep a straight and narrow path when they're doing it. I always do what's right. I always try to tell the truth. And I always do what you was raised to do.
Right.
Because it's going to come back on you in the long run when you don't do right. It's going to catch up with you. Because we had those moments where I tried not to be one of those, I told you so, but I've always had those conversations with my son about jail and prison because I have the experience of working there firsthand. But I know from the experience of looking at other young boys coming to prison, and I can see beyond their trying to be hardness, and I can see the fear beyond that. I always try to talk to him and teach him how to kind of pray and ask God to give him the ability and the authority to walk in an upright position and try to do right by people. Honor me, honor your adults as well, and your elderly. Do what you're told to do, and just be nice, be kind to people, be a blessing to others. Try not to be so big of a mess. I always try to be a blessing to others. But as a parent, always make sure you let your child know that they're loved and hadn't been forgotten about because they're behind bars.
Right. That I'm proud of them anyway. I mean, not anyway, in spite of.
Yes.
That makes a big difference. What do you think, Lester, on
I'm
that?
saying that in spite of that incarceration state, it's a very, I'm telling you, it goes a long ways to hear it, you know, because you're in an environment where you're constantly questioning your own sense of identity, your own, and questioning everything you have done. But to just get a positive affirmation from your parents that I'm proud of you. Like I said, I took great pride in when I accomplished something in prison to send it home to my dad and hear it when I get on the phone. Dad, did you get that? Like, yeah, boy, I'm proud of you, boy. I know when you get out, you're gonna do this. That gave me that navigation. I was able to navigate all of the negatives. See, when as a parent, you gotta remember that they're in a very isolated, that environment is a dark, negative environment. And not only are you struggling with the grief process, he or she's struggling with grief. Like my book, The 5 Stages of Incarceration, that's a grief process. That whole book is all about my stages of grief, self-denial, anger, victimization, forgiveness, transformation. And that person is struggling with it as well as you're struggling with it. They're struggling with their own individual grief because now they got to wrap their heads around the fact that I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life. That I can't even, I don't even fantasize what I could have been. But the way the court system is, I got 40 years before I go home. So they need, and everybody around them say, man, you ain't gonna never get out of prison. Man, you got 4, you're never gonna get out. So to hear those positive words from someone, and that's the parent, to say, I'm proud of you, it gives them that hope to push through even more in that stage of their individual grief of incarceration. Right. So keep sharing those positive affirmations to your loved one, regardless of what. Keep letting them know that you love them. I always tell people, write a letter. The hardest time for a person in prison is holidays and birthdays. Like if you don't do nothing else on those days, send a card, send a letter, do whatever you can, because those are times of high suicide rates, attempted suicide rates in prison. More violence takes place in prison during this time, during holidays, because people are angry. So when you get a letter and you see your mom say, I love you, in a card, and oh my God, if you send me some money to go to the canteen, oh my God. You know, so just think about those things. And I just encourage others who are listening to really take the time to just write a letter to your loved one. I know it's hard, but just a card. You can go get a card and sign your name and say, baby, I love you. Mommy thinking of you, daddy thinking of you. It goes a long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As we are preparing to close, I want to share with everyone that I want you to think about how you process your information, how you grieve, and the imageries or the words that we use in our community as mental allegories, those false images that flash through your mind, and not beat yourself up. Yeah, not beat yourself up. And remember this is the most important thing that I can leave with you. You and I did not come into this world with a guideline on how to live it. Each and every day, we are striving to get it right. Some days I might get it right. Some days I might get it wrong. No matter where it is, what is going on or how it's going on, be okay with forgiving yourself first. Be okay with understanding that you and I work within the capacity of what we have. Okay, we work within the capacity of what we have. That is our knowledge, our financial status. That includes where we live, you know, what we can do, how we can do, whatever is within your capacity, that's what we work within. And it is okay to say, guess what? I hurt today. It's okay to say, I'm sad. It's okay to say, I love you. I love my son. I love my daughter. I'm here for them. Because guess what? You are all they have.
Yeah.
And they need you. You are all they have and they need you. So I want to thank everybody for joining us, for giving so much of yourself today. The certificate, the thank you is not enough, but these air virtual hugs are coming through. I love you. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. But now, before you go, before we close out everything, how can all of these amazing people that stayed with us for these 2 hours, and they just been chiming over here, but how can they get in contact with each of you for speaking engagements, for your books, for anything? Let's start with Miss Queen Woods and April, and then we're going to jump over to Pastor Jones and Lester in that order, please.
Well, you all, everybody pretty much knows they can reach me on my Facebook page. My Instagram is Woods Queen, is my name backwards on my Instagram. You can also contact me at my cell phone number, 803-467-0329 as well. My email address is qwoods13@gmail.com.
I am on Facebook. It's April Hart. That's my name. My bath and body business is Hart's Delight Bath and Body. You can message me through that business page. My phone number is 803-325-4221. I am always available to listen. So that's why I give that phone number out. I'm sorry. My email address is heartsdelightllc@gmail.com.
And your community?
I could be reached. I'm grateful to be here today. Once again, to everybody that viewed. If you need to speak with me, I can be reached at Kelvin L. Jones on Facebook. You can reach me at Kelvin L. Jones Facebook. I'm right here in Columbia, 6212 Shakespeare Road, Columbia, South Carolina, 29203. I'm here Monday through Friday. You can reach me there. Or if you want to call me, you can. My number is 803-507-9057. Again, that's 803-507-9057. Look forward to hearing from any of you guys.
You say, oh, I'm sitting there like, I'm really in awe. Listen, we definitely got to do this again in another space. I am like, really, when we get off this call, I'm really going to be doing some brain dump with you. But I would just say that you guys can just go to my my website. It's path2redemption.org, and all of my contact information is there. You can eat my email, you can message me, everything is there. So just go to my website, path2redemption.org, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. And again, thank you all who are on this panel. Thank you for your openness, your honesty, your willing to be vulnerable. I truly believe that you being transparent today is going to transport people and allow them to begin to heal. So as you were processing today, know that there were so many people who did not maybe left a message, but really felt the message today. And I think that that's very important. So I appreciate you, the panelists, for your bravery and willing to share this. And I have so many ideas now of creating a better friend, not a better, but using this as a model. You feeling me, right, Doc? Creating a better model to open this up for more women to come in and have a safe space to heal and to share. So thank you guys for giving me the mental framework, and look forward to continue to partner up with this panel as we continue to build this out. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Again, this has been one of our monthly meetings, and tackling a topic that I didn't know had not been examined. The mental sentence of parents with an incarcerated child. Very amazing. I know that you were very impactful, as Lester just shared, and we thank you for giving us some of your time. Be brave. That's the message I want to leave with you today. Be brave and be vulnerable if you need to. Whatever it is you need, be it. Our organization, again, is Rediscover Me Women Initiatives. We work with women and young teen girls. Our aim, again, is those that are affected by abuse, trauma, and mental health. We have a community on Facebook of phenomenal women who have just been making some life strides and changes, called Rediscover Me, as well as all the other social media. You can view our website at rediscovermewi.org. rediscovermewi.org. And for those women that may need do not know how to process those mental issues, we've created a new book called The Mental Safety Plan. The Mental Safety Plan. This has been designed intentionally to help you to begin to understand and process your mental issues, things that you're dealing with, stress, being overwhelmed. It's a solace journal. It's very in-depth, and there's also massive tools that you can use, you can download, and you can apply to your everyday life. And so we encourage you to get that book. We encourage you to reach out and get Lester's book. I got it for family members. You heard Queen say she got it, and they are impacted by that book. It's so important for you to do what you need to do for yourself. And so with that being said, we thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful and blessed Saturday. Take care.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Y'all hold on, please.
Okay.